to the meeting. To state the first open meeting law, this meeting is being televised live by cable Channel 9 and being taped by PBD Access TV and also being recorded by our own City Council stenographer. Mayor, would like to have a few things to say.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Council. I wanted to ask our State Senator Joan Lovely and our State Representative Tom Walsh to join me, as well as Steve Kalivas, who we are honoring tonight. I think all of us know Steve and what he's meant to our community. He's been a business owner on Tremont Street, Tremont Pharmacy, as well as a licensed pharmacist. But putting that aside and the contributions he's made in that way, he has been for the past 40 years a volunteer for the City of Peabody, first on the Park and Rec Commission for 3 years, and then over 37 years on our Board of Health. And countless city issues, countless ordinances that he's been a part of to make our city a better place in terms of smoking regulations and just numerous issues that he's had to deal with. He's a gentleman who's not only been a part of our community in a business way, but also has gone that extra mile for the citizens of Peabody and volunteered and served our city in countless ways. He retired, stepped aside about a year ago, and he's returned, and we wanted to take this opportunity to show our appreciation and gratitude for what Steve has meant to our community and for the countless hours he spent working to try to better our city and make the necessary improvements that we always need to make for our city to work properly. And I did have a presentation that I wanted to make, and Sharon Cameron is back there. She's actually filming this, our health director, who couldn't speak highly enough about Steve and what he brought to the Board of Health. But I do have a plaque, and I know that Senator and State Rep have one as well that they wanted to present. But I wanted to present this to Steve Kalivas on behalf of the City of Peabody. It is my honor to congratulate you for your hard work, dedication, and commitment on behalf of our citizens. We gratefully acknowledge the outstanding contributions you have made to our city during your 40 years of service as a member of the Peabody Parks and Recreation Commission and the Peabody Board of Health. Please accept our sincere gratitude and best wishes for many years of continued health, happiness, and prosperity. As all of you know, it's so important. The work we do is important, but to have volunteers serving on the Planning Board, the Zoning Board, the Board of Health, Conservation Commission, so many people are important to make this city work. And Steve embodies all of that selflessness and caring and giving attitude toward the City of Peabody, and it's my honor to present Steve with this token of appreciation. Thank you, Steve.
Good evening, councilors. It's nice to see everybody. Councilor McGinn offered me that chair. Thought I could slide right in over there, but it's a pleasure for me to be here, and certainly to honor Steve Kalivas. Steve has given so much to this community, not only his public service on the Board of Health and all the activities he's done on the city's behalf, but also he's an active church member. He was a business owner for so many years. And Steve, I don't know if you know this or not, but many years ago, for a short time, we lived on Winthrop Street. And Steve's store was right at the corner. My daughter was 5 or 6 years old. And she thought she was so independent when she walked down those 5 houses down to get something at the pharmacy. And we could see her the whole way. And you know, Steve was always great to the kids in the neighborhood, took care and watched out for everybody. And that was on top of all his community service. So it really is an honor for me to be able to share in honoring you tonight. And I'd like to read this citation from the House of Representatives. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts House of Representatives, be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Stephen S. Kalivas in recognition of your 40 years of dedicated service to the City of Peabody. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. And this is presented to you on the 27th day of September, signed by Speaker Robert DeLeo and myself. Steve, congratulations and thank you.
Good evening, councilors. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here tonight. I was telling your clerk we should do this more often, and he suggested maybe every 2 weeks, but I think we'd retire out City Hall pretty quickly if we did that. But I, too, am honored to be here this evening to honor Steve Kalivas and for his service to this city over many, many decades. And I'd like to be able to read this citation. Commonwealth of Massachusetts State Senate. Be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to Stephen S. Kalivas in recognition of your retirement after 40 years of dedicated service to the city of Peabody. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to and a copy thereof transmitted by the Clerk of the Senate. It is signed by our President Karen Spilka and offered by me, your state senator, with privilege and honor. Congratulations, Steve.
He's going to sing the national anthem.
Now I'll entertain you. I was thinking today when I went into business and I was in my early 20s, I had an uncle who had come to this country at the turn of the century. And he went to Harvard undergrad and Harvard graduate, which was very unusual in those days. And when I started my business, he came in one day and he said to me, how you doing? Fine, this and that. You know, business was good. I was doing well. And he says, you know, if you give back an equal amount to what you've been enriched, you leave this world a loser. If you give back a little bit more than what you've been enriched, then you're a winner. So, you know, I scratched my head and thinking about that, and I said, gee, that's very profound. So maybe I should get involved with the city and get on one of the commissions or something. So at that time, Mayor Mavroulis, I spoke to him, and he appointed me to the Park Recreation. And the director at that time was Dick Walker, who I liked very much, and we did a great job together. But a few years after that, Mayor Tarajan was elected, and he wanted an entirely new Board of Health. And since I was a pharmacist and since I had taken courses in public health, I said, well, only makes sense, I'll apply for that. And I think I was Mayor Tarajan's first or second appointment when he became mayor. And I remained on, and before I go on to that, he called me into his office and he said to me, Steve, do you want the pension and the health benefits as well? I says, pension and health benefits? I didn't think this job gets paid. So he said, well, there's a small stipend. I think it was less than $100 a month at that time, much less. So I says, no, I didn't come here for that. I says, I came here to give something back to the city. So he says, you better go home and think about that. Well, I said, I don't have to think about it. The answer is no. But I remember driving home that day saying to myself, I'll be lucky to be here a year. Well, I didn't think I was going to be 40 years. But there's two things that impressed me over the years, and the first thing was serving all those times under 5 different mayors, including this young man here, this fine young man, young to me. None of the mayors ever said to me, pulled me aside and said, I want you to vote this way, or I want you to vote that way, or I feel this about this position or that position. Every single one of the mayors said, do what you think is right, and that's all I ask. The only one additional thing Mayor Tarajan said to me, that if you take a cup of coffee, I'll hang you. So I said, you don't have to worry, I won't take a cup of coffee from anyone. But I thought that was refreshing to hear, and never had a mayor twist anyone's arm or anything. We did what we thought was right, and I think we did a pretty good job for the city. And the second thing that impressed me, and I don't have to say this, but I will, you should be very proud of that department downstairs. You've got an excellent director right there, Sharon Cameron, and you have an excellent chairman in Bernie Horowitz, who was a former inspector, and then he was the chairman, and now he's the chairman, director, and now chairman of the Board of Health. You can put that board up against any Board of Health in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and you'd be proud. And we've handled many issues. The mayor mentioned smoking. He mentioned there are other things going back to the massage parlors where we were in court almost on a daily basis. And from the dump, from the hotels, from swimming pools, from tattoos. The state didn't even have any of these regulations, and we wrote them ourselves here, and all the other communities copied us. And the state then asked us what we were doing, and they incorporated it in a lot of their work. So I thank you once again. This wasn't necessary. I told the mayor that many times, and I appreciate it, and thank you once again, Mayor.
And Steve, if you would lead us in a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance, we would be totally grateful.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you. God bless America.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Just as I missed it earlier, this is the regular meeting of the Peabody City Council to be held Thursday evening, September 27, 2018 at 7:30 at the Frank L. Wiggin Auditorium, City Hall, Peabody, Massachusetts, 24 Lowell Street. Thank you. We'll go to hearings. 4A, Centercore Realty. Will you please come and state your name and address and what you're looking to do? Clerk, please read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody, acting as a special permit granting authority, will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, September 13, 2018. September 27, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wiggin Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass. On the application from Centercorp Retail Properties, Inc., 600 Loring Avenue, Salem, Mass. for a special permit seeking to develop a drive-through window at 250 Andover Street, Peabody, Mass. is filed in accordance with sections 4.2.5, 6.1, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance. Peabody City Council, Councilor Edward R. Charest, City Council President.
Is the applicant here this evening?
I am, thank you. My name is John Kelty. I'm an attorney. I have offices at 40 Lowell Street in Peabody, Massachusetts, and I appear on behalf of Centercorp Retail Properties of 600 Loring Avenue in Salem, Mass. We are discussing the property located at 250 Andover Street. We're seeking a special permit from the City Council to allow the installation and construction of a drive-through window. The current tenant, Friendlies, my client has experience with other Friendlies. It is their new prototype and model to add drive-throughs to facilities that are already in operation, so that this facility, we are trying to enhance their business so that they'll be able to thrive and stay in accordance with our lease and continue to be our tenant. So we are offering to obtain permits and to eventually construct the drive-through for the Friendlies building. I had an opportunity to meet with Councilor Charest and discuss the original plan that was presented with the with the initial package, and we have revisited that plan so as to now have one-way traffic around the building with a very differently modified exit from the drive-through. So at one time we had entrance and exit located at where it currently is, and then we were circulating around the building in two directions. Our engineers, Kelly Engineering Group, Inc., David Mackwell is here this evening. If you happen to have any questions on how this traffic pattern works, we'd be happy to walk through that. And we would ask that if the council is to consider the granting of this special permit, that it be granted to Centerline, the applicant, Center Corp Retail Properties, and that it be for food use. If there was an eventuality in which Friendly's did not renew a lease, or if there was a national change in their status, then we could continue to use the drive-through, provided it would be used for food use. And if we were to come back, if we were to need to come back, it would be for a different use, such as banking or one of the financial institutions. But currently, it is being built for Friendly's part of their lease, and we're hopeful that the council would consider granting this special permit this evening. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. I have with me two representatives of Centercorp, Andy Rose, who's the principal, and Rich Newberg, and also our engineer, David Mackwell, is here this evening.
Did I have somebody receive the revised plan that's been dropped on your desk?
Making a motion to receive late communication?
On the suspension rules, motion received, late communication. All in favor? Any opposed to vote? Do you have anything further, Councilor Kelty?
No.
Is there anybody here who would like to speak in favor of the petitioner? Anybody here in favor of the petitioner? Anybody here in favor? Seeing none, anybody here in opposition to the petitioner? Anybody here in opposition? Anybody in opposition? Seeing none, Councilor Charis.
Thank you. Attorney Kelty, I appreciate you coming back with a revised flow plan of the traffic. What it was, if you remember, the councilors in the packet before, the cars were crisscrossing every different direction. This pattern that you show here certainly makes more sense. If I'm looking at the corner of the building and it says landscape area, to the corner of the front there, it looks like a walkway. Is it a doorway? Yeah, right there. And when it says landscape, this whole parking lot, the whole building is basically pavement at this point. There really isn't any grass or trees or anything like that. Are you looking where it says landscape area there? Is that it says outdoor patio? What would that consist of? Is that going to just be pavement again, or are you going to have any dirt, I guess, anywhere the water was going to be able to permeate?
My name is David Mackwell with Kelly Engineering Group. We worked with Attorney Keelty to hone the plan in conjunction with Center Corp Properties as well. The question that we're talking about is where we've created some new landscaping. As read into the record just now, I have an aerial photo of what the site looks like today. I'll put this up real quick just to reaffirm what the councilor had mentioned, that today, currently we have the building, some parking and all pavement around the building. The initial plan to get the drive-through was to maintain the current patterns of circulation and put the drive-through in and around where we have some parking and relocate or eliminate a couple of the parking stalls. Working through the comments of the councilor changing the pattern, really what we wind up for improvements is we're adding the pickup window, a menu board, circulation pattern, nice tight to the building for the drive-through use. We're making it a one-way pattern by putting a landscaping and hard surface up on a curb in this area here to direct people to the front of the building in a one-way pattern. In order to make sure that happens, we're going to change the front row to angled parking, so nobody backs out and comes out the wrong way real quick. So we lose a stall or two for that as well. And then when we come around the back, we've also created a landscaped island that won't all be landscaping. And the purpose of this is twofold, is to create a better visual entry to the building, and also what you see here in this lighter color is some potential place where they could put some outdoor seats when it's nice out, eat some ice cream, things like that. And just to create a little bit more pedestrian-friendly experience for the restaurant, taking advantage of the suggestions to create the one-way pattern to control the traffic better and get everybody to come out to the outdoor of the exit to the road, and also to create some landscaping all along this. When you mentioned in the front here, our expectation would be a few chairs and tables with landscape pots, all kinds of things in the front, and then up in this area, some screening to divide the drive-through use from the potential patio in the front, and also to define that we have plenty of room for pedestrian access. So we're taking advantage of some of the unused pavement when we reduce the parking stalls. One of the things here that we would do is we would reduce the parking from 66 stalls down to 53.
And by reducing the amount of parking, are you still in the correct number that what you need with seating?
Yes.
And, everyone loves Friendlies, And I'm sure Mr. Gould loved Friendlies before he had his own version. So I know that the, Friendlies companies, they're dropping off restaurants left and right, and we'd love to be able to keep here in Peabody to be able to say we have one. So I'm not opposed to, the drive-through for that. I think that they're probably looking to add services to the building to be able to stay in business. Some of the Friendlies have a beer and wine license. Am I correct? Some do. Your tenant does not, and we're not looking to do it otherwise either. And you also don't have, if I'm correct, ComCon sign-off, correct?
That's correct. What I've tried to indicate to David has actually been in touch with Lucia about filing requirements, and they are cleaning up. Kelly's engineering group is currently working with the landowners to clean up an order of conditions that had issued some years ago and was still open. We believe that is completed, and we'll be getting closure on that old order of conditions. And we are intent upon filing with the commission prior to any kind of construction on the building, and after the expiration of any appeal period that might issue here. I know that the City Council's regulations in general say that you should be the last stop. That's also what state law says about the conservation commissions, that they should be the last stop. We are trying to apply for this use so that we know that it's available, then enter into our discussions with Friendlies about the actual build-out and trying to provide some dates. And we would then instruct Mr. Mackwell to prepare a plan for filing of a notice of intent. And we are not, we would be very amenable to any kind of condition that said prior to any construction, we must file with the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, that's a given, right? So
Yes.
And I understand that this property has close to 40 years of the previous owners not doing what they needed to do. And I believe the current company now is in the eyes of ComCon trying to do the right thing and getting it cleaned, not cleaned up, but the order conditions that they needed to do. So I'm happy to have that. I'm also pleased that we can be able to work with a company to say finally get it done and allow them to move their project further so they can get a lease going. But it will have to be contingent that you get a letter of intent from the ComCon before a shovel goes into the ground. You're not going to be able to do anything until then.
Correct.
And certainly have a time period, as you said, to get that done.
Yes.
Right. And also that, as you said earlier, it would only be as a food use, and if not, the permit wouldn't go with the use of the building, correct?
The permit would go with the building provided it was continued to be a food use. Right.
Yes. I have no other questions. I open up to council.
Council Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jack, through you, through the chairman to you, how many cars are in the queue at any point? Sir, if you would, please. Is there enough room for what you imagine the queue being?
I think we have 13 cars total, and I'm going to count them. These are 20-foot long cars. 11 cars, 10 waiting, and one in the.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Which is actually a shortened queue from the original plan.
Council McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. Through you to Attorney Kelty. I'm confused on the request here to avoid a transfer if this continues to be a food use. There needs to be a transfer if this property changes hands. Were you suggesting something different than that?
That if the ownership remained the same and the tenant changed, but it was still food, that's all I agree that if the property is sold, then the special permit would need to be transferred by this council to the new owner.
Thank you. That clarifies it. I missed the part where you mentioned this is a lease arrangement. So yes, so we're on the same page. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Sasslaw.
Thank you. Through you to the councilor. Is this on the agenda for the next CONCOM meeting?
Not filed with the CONCOM in terms of this particular improvement to the property. The matter of closing the old order of conditions, I believe, is that still on the agenda for the next? No, they approved it and they were awaiting public service commentary on the improvements that were made by Kelly Engineering. But that's an old order.
Okay, and so my only question was, what's the expectation, assuming you get approval from CONCOM and you also get what you need here from us tonight, what was the expectation of when you would start the project and how long do you expect it to go from beginning to completion?
Spring? Why don't you come up, Andy? This is Andy Rose, principal.
In answer to your question, you know, we've taken upon ourselves to push this forward because we know that Friendly's boost their business significantly when they have drive-thrus. They didn't want to spend the money to do this. We've talked to them. We said we're going to try and attempt to get this permit, and then we have to sit down and negotiate with them to be able to. So I can't give you a timeline because I don't know how long the negotiations will take. And it's getting them to make this investment, you know, that they have to make because they would have to remodel the inside of the restaurant to accommodate the drive-thru.
Okay, so would you actually be shutting down the restaurant for a period of time also?
I can't answer. I couldn't answer that question. You know, that would be a business decision for them. I'd like to think that they wouldn't be. you know.
Oh.
But that's how, you know, how they convert existing restaurants to drive-throughs, whether they close it down and open it up, or if they remodel it at night like other stores do, that's, you know, up to them. I wouldn't know that answer.
Okay, so,
But it would not happen before next spring.
Oh, 100% correct.
okay, very, very good. No further questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Could we just get your address for the record, just so poor Allison has it?
600 Loring Ave, Salem, Mass. 01970.
Council Rosino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The one thing that concerns me about the petitioner is that it goes with food use. And what I mean by that is I think Friendly's is a fantastic restaurant. I think this would be appropriate for Friendly's. I think we have an idea as a council of what that would entail as far as a drive-through goes. I think just putting an open-ended food approval with this location concerns me, because if it's a McDonald's, if it's a Burger King, if it's something that has a high volume of drive-through, I think that changes the complexity of this use, and that changes the landscape of 114, and that changes the complete dynamic of what they're looking for. I think, in my opinion, I will not be supporting this if it's open-ended with any food use. If it's contingent on Friendly's, I am in 100% favor of this drive-through. If it's just open-ended with any food use, I think it's short-sighted because we don't know what use is going to be there. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Rosino. Other councils? Seeing none, Council Charis.
Thank you. Council Rosenau brings up a point that I was concerned with. Attorney Kelty, do you have an issue with adding that if it was other than a Friendly's, that you would need to come back as a special permit?
I don't think that necessarily, because Friendly's is a tenant, I don't think that necessarily Friendly's should be named. However, if we wanted to try to limit who the next users could be, but I'm trying to think of how to do that. Would it need to fall into fast food category? That's where we are now, is with Friendly's is qualifying as a drive-through for fast food. I don't know how we would necessarily limit it such that, for instance, another named corporation couldn't come in. We would not have. Go ahead.
Make a suggestion. I think I can make a suggestion to that. You know, because we can't go and make this deal. We're going to be forced to expend funds, and then all of a sudden, Friendly's goes out of business, and you guys say, "Oh no, forget it. We can't do it." But I think the commitment, which might help you to it being McDonald's as an example, is if we were to tear the building down to redo a site for a tenant, that's, you know, all bets are off. But as long as the building stays and these improvements stay the way they are, that, you know, the permit comes with the property, goes with the property. Does that answer your question? Because I don't see how we make that investment without, you know, I could understand, you know, McDonald's would need, you know, they tear it down as an example and build their building. That's a different drive-through.
Through the chair, but a McDonald's could keep the same frame and then make it theirs within it. So my whole
I don't think that's it.
hesitation with all of this, to me, there is a distinct difference between Friendly's, which is more of a sit-down restaurant, more ice cream, less volume, than a McDonald's, which 95% of their clientele is drive-through. So if you wanted to say like use, to me, there is a distinct difference between a McDonald's and a Friendly's.
I would address your concern and say, I don't believe that even Friendly's would make that investment. Because Friendly's has an existing lease with 1 million options, okay? So they've got a real long term. So think of it from Friendly's perspective, where they're gonna go in, remodel their restaurant to accommodate this drive-through, and then the business doesn't work out, et cetera, but you know, they're not paying the most amount of money. They're paying a below market rent currently. So they could then turn around and say, oh, we're not making it here. I want to sublease it to get back my investment. I understand your concern. I just don't know how you accommodate both of those issues where when the investment's made and then it's taken away.
To me, it's quite simple. Right now, we approve this permit for Friendly's. If the tenant changes, you come before the council and say, it is now X. Are we still good? 95% of the time, I'm going to say yes, as long as it's not something that their bread and butter is the drive-through. If it's a 50-50, then I don't have a problem with this in the long-range future. So, I mean, I understand your point. You want to try to get a deal done with Friendly's. That's the client that you're trying to attract. You want to maintain your relationship with them. I completely understand that. I just don't want this to be before us now with one thing and then it change completely 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, to be something that we never intended. So to me, we make the approval for Friendly specific, and if the tenant changes, you come before the council and we weigh that option if the time ever arises. Who knows? You might never have to come back. If Friendly's is still here 60 years from now, you'll never have to see us again.
Councilor Joyce.
Councilor Rosano, I understand your thought process, but I want to be very careful that we're not discriminating between companies of fast food restaurants. I get your point, and believe me, I'm thinking the same way, that you don't have something that is, 95% drive-through and the queuing up is a lot larger than the 13 spaces. I get it, but I'm worried about setting the tone that if it's something other than the Friendlies and it's another brand, it disqualifies them. Like I said, I get it, but I just don't want to fall into that hole that we do something we shouldn't be doing because we don't like another ice cream name, company, whatever it is. So I think my thoughts, I open it up again.
If the permit were to be issued to the owners and it were to say if the current tenant changes, then notice must be provided to the city council, and then there should be, the building commissioner should be making a recommendation as to whether this is a more intense use or, whether we should come back for really a new drive-through permit. Or are we going to be in the same, because it's the same building and same square footage, et cetera, will this drive-through being designed this evening and hopefully approved this evening, would that be adequate to suffice for the new tenant? And I do agree with Mr. Rose that if it's one of the big nationals, such as McDonald's, they are going to tear down the building. I don't disagree that you could retrofit it, but that's just the way they operate. So if we could have it based on a tenant change, notice provided, and then the council determining the adequacy of the existing for the new tenant. I mean, that gives you another bite at the apple.
Councilman McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. Through you to Attorney Kelty, is the restaurant there now, they're on a special permit? Does a special permit exist? You mentioned the terminology fast food, so I'm looking at zoning. and the use table and what's allowed in the BR, and a fast food restaurant is allowed in the BR by special permit. So is Friendly's there now under
With a special permit?
Yes.
I don't think so, is it? When you bought it, yeah.
40 years, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So it's very possible it predated the zoning, is that what you would, yeah. Okay. So if we did have if a new fast food restaurant came in, a special permit would be required for the new owner, is that?
For the new tenant, yes.
I mean, what I'm looking at is that you're not in front of us for a fast food restaurant, you're in front of us for a restaurant with a drive-through, so it doesn't discriminate between, or any kind of food, it's just a restaurant with a drive-through. So I totally understand Councilor Rosignol's point, and I'm sensitive to it, and insofar as it doesn't stipulate fast food restaurant, that it's just restaurant, I see no reason why you couldn't specify as a condition the particular type of restaurant. What's that? I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Yeah, I said, I don't know that I would put, first of all, the permit goes to the building owner and it's not the tenant, so it would seem to me if you put the name of the restaurant, you're really changing the dimension of the permit because he doesn't own Friendly's, so just.
So thank you for that feedback. So in your opinion, Mr. Chairman, there would be no need to come forward for a special permit for a fast food restaurant if a new tenant came in? Is that what's implied in your comment?
I think that if the current use is listed as a restaurant and it's going to be changed to a fast food restaurant, then he'd be coming for a permit for a fast food restaurant versus a restaurant. I don't know what the difference is. I can't remember in the zoning, but it would seem to me that that would be somewhat of a dramatic change, and they'd have to come for a permit. But right now, it's literally the way the request is being made. It's for a building used as a restaurant to have a drive-through window, and it's to the owner, not the tenant. So I don't know that you can put the name in there. Maybe you can, but I've never seen that done. For instance, Dunkin' Donuts is listed as a fast food restaurant. Is considered a fast food restaurant. So, would you be objectionable to a fast food restaurant called Dunkin' Donuts? I don't know.
Yeah, just to close on my comment, Mr. Acting President, I don't see any reason why you could not. There are differences, as Councilor Rosignol has pointed out. Those are going to have an impact on the traffic pattern, no question about it. That would substantially change what's being, what's in front of us tonight would be dramatically altered. So I don't see any reason why that limitation couldn't be put on there. Thank you.
I would only think that rather than name it by the restaurant, that if you wanted to put a condition like that on, that if the tenant changes, you have to come back. So, and that would be the clearest way to do it. So you're not picking off any restaurant name and trying to qualify if it's passed or not. Maybe just if you want to put a condition on it that if the tenant changes, you have to come back for a renewal of the permit. I think that would be as acceptable. Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just wanted to reiterate what Councilor Rosignol said. I think the issue is pretty simple. We all know that our Friendlies, it's likely not going to back up past 12 or 14 cars out onto 114. It becomes a public safety issue if it's a Sonic or a Krispy Kreme opens on 114, and then we're responsible for approving this drive-through that's caused havoc onto the highway. So I do see that, as Councilor Gravel said, this should be a provision that it's for this tenant via this lease, and then any change in the lease should come back before this council for reapproval. That's all.
Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Attorney Kelty. If we could just fast forward, say, 4 years, since we're in this world of hypothetical here this evening about a drive-through window, fast forward to 4 years from now and say they want to change ownership. And it comes to a future council, and the council says, well, this drive-through window is going to cause too much traffic for 114. Would you, as a petitioner, then say that we, as a city, would have to provide that traffic study in order to prove that? Because we can't just say that it's going to cause X amount. A certain business is going to cause more traffic than another. We can have strong opinions about that. It may seem to be clear to us and common sense to us, but we can't just say that to a petitioner without a traffic study. Now, you would be in a position 4 years from now to say, well, you'll have to provide a traffic study, isn't it? Was it Bill Ricca versus Wendy's? Yeah, Bill Ricca versus Wendy's. So I would just caution the council to not complicate things that aren't complicated for fear of something that might happen that we can't control anyway. So I'm in support of the window, and I really think we're starting to complicate things and might be treading in some water that is unnecessary and probably not safe for us to do so. So those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. Good points. Any other questions? Councilor Shrest.
Thank you, Chairman. So just want to be clear, Attorney Kelty, you'll be okay with language of saying, if approved, when the tenant changes, you will come back in front of the City Council? And you would make that part of your condition? And we had also stated that you would have to, before you do any shovel in the ground or any changes, you'd go back to COMCOM.
Conservation, yes.
Conservation, yes. Okay. Make a motion to close the public hearing?
You heard the motion by Councilor Shrest to close the public hearing. All in favor? Any opposed to vote? Councilor Shrest.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the petitioner for adding a special permit to a drive-through window with the conditions of a letter of intent, approval from COMCOM, and the condition of if the tenant changes, the petitioner must be coming back in front of the City Council. So move.
On the motion by Councilor Shrest. Any comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Sasla,
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Charist,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0, 1 absent.
Thank you, councilors.
Move to special permit B. Would the clerk please read the notice?
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody, acting as a special permit granting authority, will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, September 27th, 2018, at 7:30 p.m. in the Franklin Wiggin Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., on the application from Gary A. Nadu, 69 North Shore Road, New Durham, New Hampshire, for a special permit seeking to develop a drive-through window for a financial institution at 167 Washington Street, Peabody, Mass. As filed in accordance with sections 4.2.5, 6.1, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance. Peabody City Council, Councilor Edward R. Charis, the City Council President.
Would the petitioner please come state your name and address and what you're looking to do?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the City Council. My name is John Kelty. I'm an attorney. I have offices at 40 Lowell Street in Peabody, Massachusetts, and I appear this evening on behalf of Gary Nadeau, who has been the owner of property at 167 Washington Street for some years now. Actually, I came before this council and obtained this very same permit in 2012. That permit has expired. A financial institution, most notably Beverly Bank, has come forward. They would like to enter into a lease with Mr. Nadeau, and we have provided you with a plan that depicts the manner in which the drive-through will be approached. When we did this back in 2012, Mr. Nadeau added to the island that is between on this corner and Swampscott Ave, in anticipation of the drive-through being built and the bank occupying. And so that shuts off traffic from making a left-hand turn when you exit onto Washington. That was done in anticipation of the bank taking possession. They did not. Now we have a different financial institution back, and we'd like to have a special permit granted for drive-through at 167 Washington Street, and which would comply with the most recent plan that was provided. The reason there was a change in the plan that was provided was actually Beverly Bank had indicated to Mr. Nadeau where they wanted certain parking to be available, and where the drive-through window would be located. It's now located on it always was on the downtown side of this building. Councilor McGinn has expressed, it's his ward, he has expressed that he's concerned that the police department has not yet weighed in on this most recent submission, and I believe that Councilor McGinn would like to await until we hear from the police department. I wanted to open the hearing without a simple continuance because our tenant, Beverly Bank, is anxious that we get going and move forward. So I thought I would open the hearing and then leave it to the councilor to motion as to what he would like to see, and at least we could report to the Beverly Bank that we're on our way. And we would hope that the police department, if they're going to comment, we would hope that they would comment before the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in favor? Anyone in the audience speak in favor? Anyone in the audience like to speak in opposition? Hearing and seeing none, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Attorney Kelty summarized that well. This is an intersection that involves significant traffic volumes and a relatively complex traffic pattern, and the police department has indicated that they are working on feedback that has not yet been provided. I am definitely not comfortable moving forward on this until we see that information. So unless there's other comments for other councilors, I would move to recess the public hearing. So moved.
You heard the motion. Councilor Manny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Councilor McGinn. Do you have any idea when they're going to respond?
Yes, through you, Mr. President, to Councilor Manning Martin. The last feedback I received from the department when I asked about this late last week was that they anticipated having something mid this week. That didn't happen, but based on that, I believe it's near term.
Okay, I guess because what I've noticed lately is, we send out these notices through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councilor McGinn and my colleagues. We send out notices, Tim sends out notices to all the departments, and the police have not been responding. We have regular responses from the treasurer, the fire, and we could flip through them, and I think Board of Health is a regular respondent, the collector's office, indicating that there's no objection. And the police have not been responding in the typical paperwork back, the routine paperwork back saying that they have no objection. And when they do have an objection, they'll send somebody, so we will know, and they'll give a presentation. So I do have concerns that they haven't responded to the council formally, so that this petitioner can fairly know that they have an issue. It's it's unwritten and unofficial at this point, and they have not responded to us. And we have X amount of days, we have constructive approval, and in addition, this spot, the old Comcast building and the Waterworks building has been vacant for so long, and the petitioner has indicated that the renter, the leasee, is anxious to get in there, and I think that the city is anxious to get somebody in that vacant building. We all know that vacant buildings are problematic, and they can be subjected to vandalism and crime and squatters and things like that. And I think as a city, it's an important part of our downtown that we do want to get a good renter in there. And I think Beverly Bank is a great opportunity for the city. So, and a good suggestion, if you don't mind, from Council Rossignol would be that why don't we move forward with an approval contingent upon the approval of the police, because they really should be responding to us formally. We do send out diligently notices, and they should respond back to us so that everybody has fair notice of what's going on, especially the petitioner, to not show up at these things kind of blind. So with that, I would suggest that we move forward with an approval contingent upon the police support of it, because really that parcel has been vacant for too long. I know that we had a couple of bites over the past several years, but it just remains vacant, and it would be a shame to lose such a great occupant as Beverly Bank. So those are my remarks, and thank you for your time.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. And while I appreciate Councilor Manning Martin's comments, I, again, would reiterate that this intersection is a significant, highly traveled intersection, and without having feedback from the police department in terms of what they believe the impact will be, without having them reviewed this, I am absolutely not comfortable with moving forward on this. We've got a commitment from the department to provide feedback, and I have every reason to respect that they will do that. I don't know that there are many more complaints that I get as a counselor that rise above the level of traffic complaints that I get on various things, and this is a potentially a contributing factor to that type of an issue over time. I really want the expert opinion of the police on this before proceeding. So with that, I believe, Mr. President, there's a motion on the floor.
There is. On the motion? Councilor Melville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree along the lines where Councilor Manning Martin is coming from with this, that we do want to make a timely decision. However, somebody that goes down this intersection every day, I live right there. There is a drive-through that feeds into this intersection, and there's 4 different roads along with some one-ways and some other things that come in there, and anybody that travels at 4 o'clock or on can get the backup from the light from Eastman Gelatin. There's various issues that come along with that. I would like to just, and you know, I would hope that it would be timely, be able to report back to neighbors of mine that the police did look at this, that this was approved. Now, with that being said, if, you know, I know it would be, according to Councilor Manning Martin, that it would be contingent on an approval. They might say that, you know, the police could come back and say they would approve it, but with some changes to be requested. You know, I don't know if that would require it to come back to us, but, you know, I do would feel comfortable with that having at least be reviewed, so I can communicate that to my neighbors as well, as somebody that does go down there, and it is somewhere where I live. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Can I have a motion to receive the revised plan?
So moved.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Any other councilors on the motion? My only, if I may, my only concern is, as Councilor McGinn speaks about with the approval and the opinion of the police, if they come back with a suggestion of something different, the curb cut is placed in a different position, is, you know, 2 ways in, 1 way in, 1 way out, anything like that. So that is a concern of mine. Mr. Kelty, is your client okay if it was put on to the next agenda?
Yes. I think we've fulfilled our obligation for Beverly by opening the hearing and trying to move forward. And I believe that they'll stay with us and we can see what recommendations the police department makes.
Gary, thank you for coming up. Please state your name and address for the record.
Gary Nato, 69 North Shore Road, New Durham, New Hampshire. When I came before, I had to go to the police, I had to go to DBW. It was a lot of research, and then we came to terms to extend the island 12 feet. I put a curb cut. The police sent letters, recommendation. DBW, everybody was all for it. I didn't know it expired. You know, so I don't see any difference from today, 6 years ago. Everything's the same. I mean, the police were all for it then. I mean,
The only difference I can definitely say is there's different committee members here than 6 years ago.
yeah, I know. I understand that.
So
We're
that,
not talking about
when
you
you
guys.
ask
We're
what,
talking about the
you don't see
police.
any, when you said you don't see any difference, I can just say that's the only difference
No,
that I can see.
I mean from the police point of
Okay,
view. They
yeah.
were okay with it then. I don't see why
But
it would change.
Yeah, the councilor would like to hear from the police, and I think we can ask the city clerk if he can reach out to the police to make sure we have a response from them before the next meeting. You'd be okay? Councilor Gravel.
And this is just a question. What happens if they don't respond?
Quite honestly, I don't see that happening. I don't know why they would not respond, and if they don't respond, then I think we satisfied Councilor McGinn's request to wait another session, and he would have to go on the merit of this council of saying they gave it the opportunity for the police, and would have to move up or down on that. Again, I'm not interested in delaying this any longer than it needs to. I think it's probably just a management or a inter-office memo that didn't receive.
Yeah, my only reason for asking the question is because he started the clock. By doing this, he can tell his tenant, hey, I started the clock on this, and they were just waiting for the police department. The police didn't show up. Is there any way we can strengthen the recess by saying, you know, that we're going to recess the hearing, and then, and add into that we're requiring the police department to respond prior to the next meeting so that they have faith and confidence that, they're going to get the information. I think that sends a strong message to their tenant that the council's willing to do this, but, in concern for the ward councilor in particular and the residents in that area, that, they just want to get a confirmation. Because frankly, if they don't respond by the next meeting, I, for one, would be willing to, without anybody asking, to go ahead and approve it. Because that building has sat there as an eyesore for years and years and years. And there's not a lot of takers on that building. So I certainly wouldn't want to lose a good tenant because somehow everybody else is too busy to put a simple response in that says, hey, it's safe or it's not safe.
I hear you loud and clear. Councilor McGinn, will you be interested in adding to your motion?
Yeah, I have no problem with adding the suggestion by Councilor Gravel that with a requirement that the police respond by prior to the next scheduled city council meeting.
Mr. Kelty, would that be okay with you and your client? Yes. Councilor Manny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just so that I can share with folks at home, the police department and every department in the city gets from the city council. So they're getting a request from us to respond to this gentleman's request. And it clearly states he's submitting. Gary Nadeau is submitting for 167 Washington Street to each department to send their objections or indicate that they have no objections for his parcel on the map. The hearing date is indicated as September 13th. Right. So we've already recessed this once. The comments were due by September 6th. Today's September 27th. So they didn't respond by its original date of scheduling, because we still haven't received anything. They haven't responded this evening. And this is from the city council, asking for a report from the police if they have objections or not, so that we can do our due diligence. So maybe I'll make a motion during motions, orders of resolution to ask them who receives it, what their process is, and why they're not responding to the city council. This is the city council asking them for information in order that we can give this guy a fair hearing and due process. So here we are now saying, well, pretty please respond to the council. So it's really unacceptable. And I apologize to you, sir, that you're in this situation, and I respect the situation that you're in, but the clock is ticking, and we do need responses from our department so that we can do our job here and not get ourselves in the soup. So I would appreciate if, departments would respond to the city council's request for information in order that we can do right by the petitioners, give them their due process, and give them a fair hearing. So thank you very much.
Anything else on the motion? Anyone else? Councilor McGinn. Yes. Just for understanding, just read your motion again, if you would, for me.
It's a motion to recess the public hearing with a requirement that the police respond prior to the next scheduled PBD City Council meeting. So moved.
You heard the motion. Roll call on the motion.
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Sasla.
Yes.
Matsoulis. Manning Martin.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Charist.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Correct.
And I would ask the clerk to put it first on the agenda.
Okay. It's October 11th, though. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being patient.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Manny Martin.
Thank you. And just for the record, Tim, the clock starts ticking this evening because we opened up for constructive approval.
Yes, hearing is open. So once we close, we have 90 days to act.
Thank you very much.
4C, would the clerk please read the notice? Continuance. Councilor Sasslaw.
Yes, under suspension of rules, motion to receive item 8F.
You heard the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Council President, so this is a communication from the petitioner requesting to continue until October 25th. I have no problems with that, so move.
You heard the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Reports of Committee, Industrial Communication Development. Councilor Gould, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a meeting, very informative meeting tonight, put on by Mr. Callahan and Ms. Baker from a consultant company in regards to the MVP Stakeholder Workshop Summary, which MVP stands for Municipality Vulnerability Program. It was very enlightening. It talked about our work with areas of the city for our vulnerability towards flooding in particular. But I was very impressed with the work that we have done through the Community Development Group and the Planning Group, and there's a lot of good things in the pipeline that we'll continue to work on. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Gould.
Sorry, I should have said who was in attendance. I apologize. Myself, Councilor Melville, Councilor McGinn, Councilor Rossignol, Councilor Turco. Also in attendance was Councilor Sharis, Councilor Gravel, and Councilor Manning Martin. So moved.
Finance Committee, Councilor Gravel.
Thank you, Council President. This evening, there was a meeting held with Finance Committee. Attending on behalf of the Finance Committee were myself, Councilor Gould, Councilor Manning Martin, Councilor McGinn, Councilor Turco. Also in attendance were Councilor Mitsoulas, Councilor Melville, and Councilor Rossignol. There were two items on the agenda. And the first one was a lease agreement for a 2019 KME custom pumper for the fire department. The pumper with an additional camera was requested to be put on a lease for a total of $685,000. And it was discussed, the purpose of putting it on a lease was that we would be able to get the much-needed pumper to replace the much degenerated old pumper quicker. So the request was to put it on a 7-year lease and to put it for $685,000, and also to provide a buyout provision if possible on the lease. So if we at any point we want to buy out the lease, we can. But at the end of the term, it will be ours for $1. After discussion and understanding it further, a motion was made to allow the mayor to enter into a lease of greater than 3-year terms for an amount of $685,000, and requesting again that they negotiated a buyout provision if possible. So moved.
Heard a motion. Roll call, please.
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Sasslaw,
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rossignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville, Gravel,
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Second item on the agenda, we had a delightful presentation by our city clerk, Tim Spanos, regarding the status of pay for our election workers, having done a comprehensive study of the area and noting that there is a requirement to keep up with getting people to staff the polls. He requested that we change the rate of pay and add one position to the election staff. So a motion was made by Councilor Gould, and it was approved unanimously. The motion is as follows. To delete Section 1820, Schedule of Compensation for Part-Time Positions, 16.c Clerk, $140 daily, 16.g Deputy Clerk, $125, 16.h Deputy Warden, $125, 16.i Inspector Precinct, $110, 16.m Warden, $140, 16.l Tab Clerk Precinct, $65, and 16.k Tab City Clerk Wide, $100, and insert and replace the following. 16.c Clerk, $170, 16.g Deputy Clerk, $150, oh, and the first one was daily. 16.g Deputy Clerk, $150, 16.h Deputy Warden, $150, 16.i Inspector Precinct, $125, 16.m Warden, $170, 16.l Tab Clerk Precinct, $75, 16.k Tab Clerk Citywide, $150, and a new position, 16 Precinct Assistant, $160. All ordinance or parts of ordinance inconsistent herewith are hereby repealed. This ordinance shall take effect as provided by law, and that was the motion to advertise as approved.
You heard the motion. Roll call, please. Sorry, Councilor Sasslaw.
Thank you. I just came in a little bit late at the end of the hearing. I just had a question of Clerk Spanos. Did you also express the fact that you were having, was there concern about having fully staffing on election days? Is that an issue that you're dealing with also?
Yes.
Okay, and I just wanted for the viewing public at home and to make it public to let people know that if they are interested in performing a civic duty and participating on election day, they could reach out to you and possibly participate and help out on election days?
Absolutely.
Okay, and also, you know, we have, I know we have a very vibrant community at Brooksby Farm at the Senior Center, so once again, if any seniors are looking to, or anybody at that matter would like to help out, I think it's a great civic thing, so I just wanted to throw that out. Thank you.
Any others? Roll call, please.
Councilors McGinn.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Charist.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0, 1 absent. Thank you, councilors.
Motion and resolutions. Councilor McGinn, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to receive and approve item 8G. And on the motion, just would remind councilors that this is the warrant for the upcoming November 6th election, so we need to sign that before you leave tonight. So moved.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. No further motions.
Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion co-motion with Councilor Mitsoulas to trim the trees at the corner of Roycroft and Margin Street so that the traffic light can be viewed. It's impeded by the overgrown trees that is going westbound. Tim, please. So moved.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
And I'd also like to make a motion to be proactive. As everyone knows, we're going to be doing over Central Street, and there's a consulting firm called World Tech. I'd like to see if our city engineering department can work with World Tech and look at the possibility of replacing the natural gas pipelines down Central Street from Main to Wilson Square. Just it's in light of, especially in light of what's happened to our neighbors north of us. So I'd like to have the city engineering group work with World Tech. So moved.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
I'd also like to have the storm drain, co-motion with Councilman Mitsoulas. Just sit back, Jim, I got you. Councilman Mitsoulas, to have the storm drain at 17 Margin Street cleaned out. So moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Further motions, thank you.
Councilor Sasala.
Thank you. Under suspension of rules, motion received. Item 8C.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you. And item 8C is, it is a notice that the Colton Buckley Foundation will be having their road race. This is their 5th annual Colton Buckley Road Race. It's not until Sunday, November 11, 2018, and I'm sure Council Manning will be throwing down the gauntlet with a challenge, but I did want to get it out there. So once again, it's Sunday, November 11, 2018 at 10 a.m. at the AOH. And as an addition this year to the race, the Colton Buckley Foundation is inviting the community the night before to a free pasta party at the AOH again on Saturday, November 10th from 3 to 7 p.m. And there'll be raffles and children activities and ice cream. And so that looks like it's going to be a great weekend for that foundation. If anybody would like any information, they can reach out to Todd Buckley at bucktodd@aol.com. And also, if anyone's interested in registering, they can go to www.northshoretiming.com. Under suspension of rules, motion to receive item 8E.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you. I hope my fellow councilors maybe had the opportunity to read item 8E. It's a little bit, it's concerning. It's a little bit sad, quite frankly. It's an issue that a constituent, and I don't know if they live in my ward or not, but the issue is that the constituent has been going down to visit Oak Grove Cemetery, and they really don't want conflict or confrontation, but the issue they brought to the forefront was that there's an issue with dogs. Dogs not being on a leash, and owners not picking up the waste of their dogs. In the letter, it says the policy is posted that they be leashed and waste be picked up, but the signage is minuscule. So I'm going to make a motion. They're asking maybe about a possible ordinance change, but I'm going to hold off the ordinance change. What I am asking for support of my fellow councilors is I'd like to make a motion to send this letter to both the Cemetery Commission and the police, and the motion be that increased signage and larger signage be placed up asking that all dog owners leash and pick up any waste removal. And I'm going to leave that into the hands of the Cemetery Commission to order new signs, bigger signs with that. And if anybody would like to comment on that matter, feel free. But as I said, it was just a little bit, it's something that I think anyone who had relatives who were buried there could feel for the constituents. So that's my motion. So move.
Councilor, if I may, I did read that letter, and it was quite saddened that, especially at a cemetery, and for the reasons of this couple, had to go to the cemetery for their visiting their children. My mom had buried 2 of her children before she had passed, and she always said that no parent should ever have to bury their child. And when you go to a cemetery to pay your respects, the fact that you have dogs messing and people not picking it up by your gravesite of your loved ones is deplorable. So it really did bother me quite severely because, I am a dog owner, but I certainly wouldn't allow my dog to do this, and I just can't think of what people's frame of mind is to let their dogs run free and not pick up after them, especially after them. So I certainly support this, and thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you, Councilor. Motion.
The motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion. The DPS replace the stop sign at the corner of Rita Road and Gooddale Street with a brand-new stop sign.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
I'd like to make a motion to the Department of Public Services that they move the stop sign at the corner of Reeder Road and Crane Ave from the street sign to the telephone pole located directly next to the sign, as the stop sign cannot be seen and people are running the stop sign. So move.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to make a motion and send this to the, Municipal Safety Committee. The motion is a motion to investigate the addition of a blinking flashing light immediately before the dangerous curve located at Gooddale and Connors Road. The reason why I'm making the motion is there was just another very bad accident there recently. The two homeowners that abut that curve, the city has put up guardrails in front of their homes, but there continues to be an issue there, and I'd like to investigate and get some information from the police department on how many accidents have happened there, and I would like to investigate the blinking light, but also in respect to the homeowners that are there. You know, I don't know how they feel about a blinking light 24/7, but there definitely has been a lot of activity and some actions there, and I think it's something that we need to investigate at this time. So move.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Mitsoulas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a co-motion with Councilor Gould and myself. This is to ask Public Works to repair the sidewalks at number 7, 9, and 11 Driscoll Street. Mr. Chairman, one of those sites has already been worked on, and they were just waiting for a motion, which is what I'm doing right now to get that motion out. And also another motion with Councilor Gould and myself is to have Public Works repair the curb on 15 Driscoll Street. And Mr. Chairman, that is also being worked on. And what happened is that curb was taken out a while ago. The person is getting water in their cellar because there's no curb there. And once this motion goes out, the city will go down and repair it. So that's why I'm making the motion. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Okay, also, Mr. Chairman, I got a call from my constituents on Sheffield Drive, and I went down here, and this complaint was about coyotes, and Councilor Turkle, you could probably tell me who to refer this to. I know that you've made these motions before. I went down and I walked Sheffield Drive and Sabino Farm Road, and the neighborhood, most of the neighborhood, they all have dogs down there, and they're afraid to walk the neighborhood. They do walk, but they're very aware of the coyotes that are there. And one of the requests coming out of one of those neighbors on Sheffield Drive and the Sabino Farm Road, the entrance going into the cemetery, is to cut some of the shrub away 2 feet from the road. When people walk by, they'll have more visibility to see if there'll be a coyote jumping out on them, you know. And from what I understand, this problem has been going on a while. I just haven't heard about it. You know, I remember Councilor Turco made a motion. Am I correct, Councilor? That was you, right? And be honest with you, I didn't have that problem, so I really wasn't paying much attention, but I have that problem now, and I see how serious the neighbors are taking this, and they're pretty upset. And if you have any suggestions, please jump in, because I'm doing everything I can to satisfy that neighborhood. So also, besides having Public Works go down there and cut a couple feet of shrub away, on that Sabino Farm Road entrance that goes to the cemetery, I'd like to have a sign posted saying coyote sightings. And also on Sheffield Drive, the open area that goes into the field, I'd like to see a couple signs there also to at least make the neighborhood alert, which I'm sure they're alert of it anyways. It's a pretty tight-knit neighborhood, and they all know what's going on down there. So, John, who would you refer this to?
Mr. President, through you to Councilor Matsoulis. Again, I would send it to Sharon Cameron in the Health Department so that she's aware there's an issue there, and,
Yeah,
and
okay.
I'm sure she'll address it with the
Okay.
residents.
Yeah, and the police department also, I mean, if they, I don't know what interest they would have in it.
Sure. But on
Okay.
your motion for the signs, all in favor, any opposed, as a vote? And then we also want to refer to Sharon Cameron about
Right.
understanding information.
Good.
Right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else, Councilor?
No, that's it.
Councilor
Thank you.
Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the Colton Buckley Foundation 5K that Council Sasselar has mentioned, I'd like to set up a drug education and awareness subcommittee meeting and invite the Buckleys to come and present on that. They are also, as you mentioned, having a pasta dinner the evening before. And what is also new this year, which is kind of exciting, is I don't think it's confirmed yet, but the idea is to have the fire department's knock and walk program where they go out to the homes where there have been overdoses and Narcan use to come and present, also with an ambulance service, to come and present to folks a Narcan training. So I think they're just buttoning that up. So that's going to be scheduled the night of the pasta dinner. So that's pretty exciting and should be very interesting. So if I'll, Tim, set up another subcommittee meeting for drug education and awareness prior to in advance of the November 11th, so the Buckleys can come in and present on their foundation. So moved.
That wasn't in the form of a motion, right?
Just
a
report of progress and set up, so moved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And lastly, I'm noticing that of the 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, I think. I think, Tim, you send out these department response requests to nine of the city's departments, and I am noticing that only 3 or 4 regularly respond. So if, in the form of a motion, if we could send a letter from the council to these departments to remind them of the importance of a response to these requests, whether they have an objection or not have an objection, to please respond by the date indicated on the request for information. So moved.
You heard the motion, all in favor, any opposed, it's a vote. Is that all?
That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Rosenau, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under suspension of the rules, I'd like to receive and approve all papers being in order, the block party, the late communication. So moved.
Do we need on the motion, all in favor, any opposed, it's a vote.
No further motions. Thank you,
Councilor
Mr. Chairman.
Turco.
Mr. President, move to refer to Forestry Department the trimming of the trees on Linfield Street, and ask that they please do this before the winter, as many of the limbs are well overhanging Linfield Street.
You heard the motion, all in favor, any opposed, it's a vote.
Mr. President, move to refer to Public Services that the berms on Will Sawyer Road, which there are many, I think the asphalt berms be replaced as soon as possible. Thank you.
Are you asking all the berms on the whole road?
Just the ones that are missing, Mr. President.
Do you have any?
They'll obviously see there are so many addresses that rather than read that, I would let them ride up the street and see the ones that are missing.
I'm sure Mr. Kelly would appreciate that.
I'm sure they're capable of.
I heard the motion, all in favor, any opposed, it's a vote.
Thank you. Mr. President, through you to the clerk, I'd like to set up a Public Services subcommittee and ask that we have Bob Labossiere, the Public Services Director, come and speak to us about his first 90 days and some issues and things that he's seen within the city and anything that he may need our assistance with in the coming future, and also to discuss his plan for winter, which we know we'll all get the phone calls when the proper sidewalks aren't done. With that, if you could also ask, I think we have a assistant facilities director. Currently is Dave Gamache. I don't think we have a facilities director. If you could have him come and maybe we could talk together about how we're going to address the sidewalks with the schools and the city side. That would be great.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also, in that same Public Services Subcommittee, I'd like to add the issue of block parties, which I understand, this is a great service to the residents of Peabody, but I would like to see if maybe the council's in favor of making some changes where maybe the residents can pick up their own barrels and cones at the Public Services facility. And the reason I'm mentioning this is throughout the summer, many times we've tied up crews from Public Services to do the drop-off and pickup of these items, and I think it's just as simple to have them available to people at 50 Farm Ave to sign out and pick up on their own. But for group discussion, if you don't mind, I'd like to refer that also to the Subcommittee for Public Services.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
And lastly, Mr. President, for informational purposes, October 4th at the Planning Board downstairs at the lower-level conference room will be the Stonegate subdivision. For my fellow councilors and anybody listening at home, 2 topics on that subdivision that will be discussed were the traffic study and the excavation impact report that were both submitted. If anybody is interested in attending, thank you.
You heard, just an FYI. Councilman Melville.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just one motion. I'd like to make a motion to the community development to get an update on the timeline regarding the Crowning Shield issue. There's we had a discussion about it in the Human Services Committee last meeting, and the end of September was a pretty important date on the finalization of financing and where that was going, and I'm just looking for an update, that's all.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
No further motion.
Councilor Gravel.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. Under suspension of the rules, I'd like to receive items 7A, B, and C and refer them to the Finance Subcommittee. So moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
And I would like to schedule a meeting of the Ad Hoc Charter Committee for... I didn't listen anyway. So, for either the night of the 16th or the 18th of October. And I would like to ask that the clerk use any form of public advertisement at our disposal to seek out volunteers for the Charter Committee. And I would also encourage all City Council members to submit names for volunteers as well, because we have to select, I believe, 3. So moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
No further motions.
Thank you. I just have a couple. I'd like to ask, this is I'm not sure exactly which way we'll go, ask for the police to input on if we're allowed to have DPW paint lines on the entrance of Centennial Park. If you're coming from Summit Street, taking a right or left into the entrance of Centennial Park, that roadway usually has 2 lanes. I'm not sure if it's permitted to have 2 lanes. But if it is, if it would be be able to stripe until we come to the state road of a 2-lane. So move. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Oh, Councilman McGinn, did I miss you?
Nope.
Nope. I also would like to ask the mayor's office and any other councilors who may have an input on how we be going about electing, hiring a city clerk in the next few months. I know that it's been a long time that we've done that, but I would like to know what the process is. I think that, with the city clerk's may have some experience with that in the mayor's office. If can they submit it to us to put into the agenda to discuss that. Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Councilor Manny Martin.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you're requesting information from...
The mayor's office and the city clerks and also the city council who has experience on what we need to do.
Right, I think the...
And human resources.
Human resources, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I asked about councils. I know you always have
Yeah.
great
Thank you.
information. So move. Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. This is another informational, not a motion, but we had I attended a meeting at the Board of Health, and I just want to echo what Steve had said earlier tonight. Our Board of Health, Sharon Cameron, is top-notch. Every time you have a question, she answers the phone immediately or gets back to you. She's so informative, and she works extremely hard for this community. So again, I know I've said it in the past, but again, just want to echo what Steve had said, that we should be very proud of that department. We did have a meeting. We had a meeting with the plant manager and the, I'm not really sure what his title is, the chief scientist. And in attendance was also the HR director of Rousselot. We talked about the cease and desist order that was placed on them a few weeks ago after the long weekend of the horrendous smells. And just be clear for the people at home, the cease and desist order does not mean they cannot operate. It means they cannot operate and produce odor. And if they do that, then they can be subject to fines and penalties, criminal and civil action. In the meeting, we hashed over, again, a few things that they were doing. Very upsetting about that long weekend and the amount of odors that transpired. Since then, they have hired a odor consultant, and that has been out there twice and taking samples. The only issues that we have is that we don't have exactly what time and dates and everything else of what the samples they've taken, and it takes a few weeks to get back with the results. They've also ordered steel covers to be installed in 2 of the odor sources, the 2 tanks that they had canvas covers on. That will be hopefully installed by November. They ordered, the plan of construction of the air curtains that would be put on Building 2. Meanwhile, I can let you folks know, these things were supposed to be done 2 years ago. So we're holding some little hope that this new gentleman who came to the meeting will get these things done. They ordered a company that came out actually today to do a study on the odor masking system to make sure that it's working properly and that it doesn't need to be adjusted. And they also hired a director of, as they call it, odor and toxicologist, to come in and to make sure the steps they are taking is the proper steps to alleviate these issues they're having. He will be out at the next meeting. I asked the gentleman who was there the last time, who said he was a hands-on person, who is now elevated to the president of the company. I will say the additional resources coming from the Darling Company, their main headquarters, has now been involved and gotten involved, and they have taken this quite seriously. Again, remaining hope, a lot of talk, but I and Councilor McGinn are certainly holding their feet to the fire. They asked for the cease and desist order to be removed. That was denied. I can tell you the Board of Directors of the Health Department gets it. They're hearing the complaints. They are tired of it. They are being very, very strong in their wordings of what can be done and what will be done if this issue continues. So that was just a information about the meeting with the department. I also asked the chairmen of the subcommittees if you can look at your packets that you may need some meetings. We're getting into the last few months of the year, and if we can get those meetings up and running, if there's anything that's hanging in your committees. That's all. Make a motion to adjourn. Councilor McGinn, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to receive item 8A, so
Thank you.
moved.
I'm
I'm receiving item 8A, so moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to receive item 8B, so moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to receive item 8D, so moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 9A, move to approve all papers being in order. Taxi and limousine driver's license, Michael Vitale, license 35, Joseph O'Brien, license 36, James Knight, license 37, Louis Anasilis, license 38. Receive, approve, all papers being in order, so moved.
You heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Councilor Rosendahl?
Yes.
Well, finger pointing going on over here.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Just through you to Tim, Councilor Churko wanted to add to his motion to add the school committee onto his motion regarding safety and snow removal as far as sidewalks go.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Add that. All approve. Councilor McGinn, councilors.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, councilors, for keeping me on my toes. Thank you. Have a good night.